Have you ever tried carrying a week's worth of groceries on foot? No car, no quick way home, just you, these bags, and a 3-mile walk ahead in the Texas heat? I know the first time I did that walk, I thought there's no way I could keep doing this. But I didn't have a choice after my car broke down and I couldn't afford to get a new one. And that's when I started noticing things about my college town, Seguin, Texas, and how it wasn't built for people without cars. And I started to wonder, why are so many towns built this way? Many of you might either be in the same situation or a very similar one. I know that when I didn't have a car, the solution seemed clear. Get one as soon as possible. Before World War II, cities in North America were designed much like their European counterparts. After the war, the US shifted from walkable, mixed-use neighborhoods to car-centric development. Instead of compact, people-focused spaces, we widened roads and zoning laws separated homes, businesses, and workplaces, making daily life dependent on driving.
Most of these roads will be 4, 6, even 8-lane expressways constructed for through traffic. They will take the over-the-road driver from city to city, coast to coast, at highway speeds, even through large population centers.
Seguin is an example of this near-universal shift. It is one of Texas' oldest cities, being founded in 1838, and has a well-preserved historic center with unique concrete architecture. Transportation in Seguin once relied on the Southern Pacific Railroad and mule-drawn streetcars. But after World War II, the city prioritized car infrastructure, removing streetcar tracks instead of electrifying them. Today, public transit options are limited to Connect Seguin, which offers trips to major destinations like retail centers and the university once per hour, and only a few regional bus connections. Ride-sharing services exist, but remain costly and unreliable. You can see the shift clearly when walking through Seguin's historic core. The older buildings designed in its traditional development pattern were built close together and right up to the sidewalk. This is because most people were expected to walk to local shops and often visit multiple stores in a single trip. Residents from nearby neighborhoods could easily walk downtown, while those living further out could take the streetcar. Many people even lived in apartments above the shops, allowing for easier downtown access for those who wanted it. As you move away from the historic core, you can see a clear transition from traditional development pattern to a car-centric one. Buildings are spaced farther and farther apart, largely because each business is now required to provide its own parking. This drastically reduces the number of businesses per block, often leaving just one or two, with no housing above, making trips on foot increasingly impractical. For example, if I lived in the historic core of Seguin, my nearest grocery store would be H-E-B, which is a 35-minute walk one way. If you're walking from the university, that trip doubles to an hour. The walkability that once defined this area has been replaced by a landscape designed primarily for cars and not people. To get a better idea of how towns like Seguin got this way and what can be done to make them better, I spoke to Jeff Speck, an urban planner and walkability expert.
My general theory of walkability says that in order to be walkable, a place has to do 4 things simultaneously, right? The walk needs to be useful, it needs to be safe, it needs to be comfortable, and it needs to be interesting. Well, the useful walk is fundamental. Like, do you have a reason to walk? Do you have the mix of uses? What's happened, of course, over time is that places like Seguin, due to the fact that almost everyone in them owns a car, have stopped providing localized, complete balance of uses. So there's no reason for there to be a hardware store downtown if everyone has a car and can go get the cheaper hardware on the edge of town in the Home Depot or the Lowe's, right? So these things all change around people owning cars.
So if we used to build cities in a traditional development pattern, and there are many benefits to doing so, especially in regards to walkability, why don't we go back? Well, there are many challenges to doing so. For one, we spent the last 70 years prioritizing cars as a preferred mode of transportation and building our cities to achieve that goal. It's hard to reverse that change. Many retailers believe their businesses rely on ample free parking to draw customers.
Best investment a town can make. Lots of parking.
Public transportation is often underdeveloped and non-existent, and current zoning laws make it practically illegal to build the way we used to. But are all those assumptions true? And is positive change possible in a car-centric landscape?
Towns like Seguin that are over 100 years old, they were initially designed for that walkability, but as the towns have grown, the infrastructure has not been supported. So I live downtown in Seguin, and we have sidewalks that will take us right down to the courtyard and to the downtown core, but many of them are in disrepair. And so now there needs to be this active reinvestment in that infrastructure. And I see that now. I think the past 10 years, there's been much more of that than there had been prior to that. But I often tell people that my dream would be that the easy solution would be to walk or bike somewhere instead of getting in the car.
Cars aren't going anywhere, nor should they. But the complete prioritization of car-centric infrastructure comes at the expense of all other forms of transportation. Traveling by car requires that every single destination include large amounts of land devoted to parking. This inherently spreads out development, making communities less walkable. It also drives up the cost of development by increasing the need for more land and more infrastructure to support it. An interesting example of how car centricity creates problems for walking even the smallest distances is the theater annex building. Across the street from the campus, there's a small old strip mall where a unit was bought by the TLU theater department. There's a 4-lane road, and before this crosswalk was added by the city, the closest crosswalk was over 3 blocks away. So naturally, students would either drive across the street or have to dart across 4 lanes of traffic. When I went to TLU, getting to class was harder than it should have been, no matter where I lived. At first, I lived right across the street from campus, but I still had to cross a busy 4-lane road with no crosswalk and cars constantly speeding by. Later on, I moved to the other side of town and started biking to school. The ride wasn't much better. The intersection with West Kingsbury and Highway 90 didn't have proper bike lanes, so cars would fly super close by, which felt uncomfortable and dangerous. I wanted to hear from others and understand how this kind of infrastructure impacts their daily lives, so I spoke to Jules Bennett, a member of the Strong Towns community in Escondido, California, a larger city facing similar challenges, to learn more about her experience.
Yeah, Escondido is terrible for kind of lifestyle. Like the sidewalks that just end are pretty iconic. The bike lanes are just so scary, and most roads don't have them. I would do my grocery run pretty regularly, and I had to go through 2 intersections that were like highway merge on and off. And of course, as soon as you get close to freeways, the bike lanes just kind of peter out. Want you over there anyway, but I need to get there. So it's, yeah, you kind of just always feel unsafe. I mean, you bike assuming that people are trying to hit you.
I actually have been on the road on a bike and had a truck come up next to me and yell at me to get on the sidewalk. And, it's not the time to try to educate someone on, well, actually, that's not legal. I'm supposed to be on the road. But it's so true. And it speaks to just the culture in a community like this that is not familiar with what bike traffic looks like. It feels unnecessarily risky to ride or bike in many areas of town.
That was definitely true in my case. My job wasn't far, just a few miles, but getting there each day without a car was a constant challenge. What should have been a simple commute became an exhausting and stressful one. It eventually forced me to seriously consider getting another car, even though I might have been fine without one. To understand what the city is doing to make Seguin safer and more walkable, I spoke to Melissa Reynolds, the Director of Capital Projects and Engineering for the City of Seguin.
In 2022, we were awarded a federal grant called Safe Streets and Roads for All, and that allowed us to create our comprehensive safety action plan, which essentially is a Vision Zero. So some people are familiar with the TxDOT's Road to 2050 of zero traffic deaths. San Antonio has a Vision Zero. A lot of cities have adopted one recently. But the intention is to make progressive improvements to allow for a future with no road deaths. Part of the comprehensive safety action plan, our team generated a heat map, which basically showed us where there were issues for both traffic collisions that had high risk injuries or deaths, but also particularly for physical pedestrian impacts and bike impacts as well. So that's been critical in figuring out where we need to have better crosswalks, better access points, and more improved sidewalks.
When you study how to make streets safe, of course, the whole Vision Zero approach is circling around constraint and the opposite of forgiveness, and to create an environment in which you just don't feel comfortable driving faster than the posted speed.
It's clear this problem isn't unique to Seguin, and thinking back to my own experience, I remember just how unsafe, inconvenient, and uncomfortable it felt. I ended up buying the cheapest car I could find just to get around, and of course it eventually broke down. And that's when it really hit me. Even if you don't want to own a car, the way our cities are designed often gives you no other choice. Jules and I talked about this too, how not having a car doesn't just make errands harder, it can even limit your job opportunities.
My job search was limited to places I could bike, and not like bike for an hour. Like I wanted to bike maybe 15, 20 minutes. When your job search is limited by your transportation, there's kind of just this threshold that you can hit. Unless you get really lucky, like you are going to have to settle and make it work. And I actually have a couple coworkers who like have temporary housing nearby because they don't have a car and stuff like that. So again, you have to make it work, but it's not pretty. And at what point do you just kind of like suck it up and go into debt and get a car? A lot of people do, which is really, really sad.
We are serving a lot of people that use their bikes primarily as their only source of transportation. But there are many people that have come to us that were in a transition or in a state of they're not comfortable in their financial or living situation. And so trying to maintain a job in transportation to that job has been a challenge.
The landscape has reoriented itself around the expectation that everyone will own a car. And so because most of your daily needs are now no longer available locally, because now everyone's traveling regionally in order to accomplish their goals, then you have to join the party. Even those people who don't want to drive are kind of forced to drive.
All across the country, towns and cities are trying to make their streets safer and more walkable, but there's a big obstacle. Many of the roads causing the most problems aren't even under local control. They're owned and managed by the state. That means that when city leaders want to fix things, add crosswalks, slow traffic, and make space for bikes, they often run into a wall of red tape.
Seguin has some state highways running through it. So the main west corridor is very clearly a state highway. It has the bold highway signage. It probably has a couple more lanes than it needs. It has some slip lanes in it and other things that make it a bit anti-pedestrian. This is the biggest challenge we face when working in cities, is to what degree are your streets owned by not you?
That entire sidewalk along Port Street at TLU is under construction right now, being improved to a ADA compliant sidewalk all the way down. We also have applied for some grant dollars through TxDOT to make better pedestrian mobility in that corridor. But we have to be very careful on how we do that because we don't control the road. So we have to get people from TxDOT to do any of that.
And Seguin isn't the only place dealing with this. In a lot of cities, major roads are designed more like highways built to move cars fast, even if that makes things more dangerous for everyone else.
When you design the way that most American street designers design, you are creating forgiveness. You're creating elbow room. And what that does, rather than increasing safety, is it increases speed. And speed is the principal determinant of danger.
I wanted to change the signals and put in pedestrian refuge bump outs and things of that nature. That's a significant traffic impact. TxDOT roadways are meant to allow for cars to move. I can't take a lane away. They're not going to let me do that. But there are other things we can do. If we wanted to make sidewalk improvements, it would probably be approved at a district level. And it wouldn't be a big deal, but it would take probably a year to get that approval.
This creates a predicament for local governments who are responsible for public safety, but don't always have the authority to make the changes that could actually improve it. And the roads where changes most needed are often the hardest to fix.
The new roads that we're building will include complete streets network. So we'll have ADA compliant ramps, we'll have wider sidewalks, we'll have plenty of lanes for the traffic. And that's the intention. Where it becomes a struggle is in areas like our downtown area and the older areas of town where the roads are narrow already, and there's a parking on the road, and there's less right of way. So we've got to get creative in how we make that work.
Small changes like protected bike lanes and curb extensions can make it easier and safer to get around without a car. But what can a city like Seguin do now?
In the short term, cities want to become more walkable more quickly. More and more places we work these days want to see change before the next election. And so they say, what can we do quickly? And that's the safe category.
The city's new comprehensive safety action plan and heat map are helping to pinpoint the most dangerous areas for pedestrians and cyclists and are now testing possible solutions.
The first step is having a comprehensive safety action plan, adopt Division 0, and then the next step is to do some demonstration projects, which are intended to be low cost non-permanent necessarily. So think striping and poles and things that are easily installed and easily removed to demonstrate safety improvements. And if we get better data showing that those are reducing risk in those areas, then we apply for additional construction dollars through the federal government that would allow us to put in permanent aspects. So some of our demonstration projects that we have a few areas in town we're gonna attempt to do these. We'll be delineating more defined driveways in some areas, and then also improving crosswalks.
But design isn't just about paint and pavement. Seguin is now thinking long-term, reworking how streets, trails, and developments connect. These kinds of incremental changes, focused on safety and tied to new development, are exactly what towns like Seguin need to make walkability a reality.
I think it was in 2023, we accepted our final stage of our Walnut Branch hike and bike trail, which is mostly off-street. It's 4 miles long. It's fantastic. It's a 10 to 12 foot wide off-street trail, all concrete. We're working on currently our transportation mobility master plan, which classifies all of our streets as, arterials, collectors, local streets, things of that nature. But we're also bringing into that our hike and bike trails plan. So we're looking at all modes of transportation on that plan and identifying corridors and routes and where improvements can be made and should be made. That plan's fantastic because it means that once we adopt it, it's not just something the city will implement. It means as development happens, they're required to build some of these roads and some of these trails to make connections there. And that's a good thing. And we see a lot more construction happen with less taxpayer dollars going into it.
Seguin and places like it are at a crossroads. It has the potential to create a future that values walkability and accessibility. But lasting change happens when people take action. So get involved in your local planning efforts, connect with your community, and become a Strong Towns member to meet other people who are passionate about changing our development pattern.